Welcome back if you've been part of the series before, and welcome for the first time if you haven't. I'm Miriam, I'm the series coordinator, and this is Cross-Pollinations, which is a series that's a collaboration between the League of Canadian Poets, the Health Arts Research Centre, and the Canadian Association for Health Humanities. It's been running for a few years, always on the last Wednesday of every month, the same time. And we explore lots of different themes. Hopefully you all know tonight's theme is on vision, eye health, illness, disability, and we have two amazing speakers. So I'll get into their bios in a minute to start with, and people have already wonderfully started doing this in the chat. Is to recognize coming in from different places. Myself and the League are based in Toronto, which is covered under treaties number 13 in the Williams Treaty, as well as the District with One Spoon Wampum Covenant. It's traditionally the territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. But today, Toronto and the surrounding suburbs are home to a huge amount of different First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, not just from Turtle Island, but also globally. And we're really privileged to be able to gather here and from everywhere, actually. Most places that also have their own really complex and important Indigenous histories. Today we're going to be joined, we are joined by two amazing speakers who are going to be speaking from not only their lived experience, but also their writing and other work related to our theme of vision and loss thereof of vision. So Devon Healy is an assistant professor of disability studies at University of Toronto in the Ontario Institute for Studies and Education, OISE. I feel like I haven't heard the whole thing said out loud in a long time. And so she's a blind woman whose work in many different areas, not just in terms of research, but in terms of theater and other writing. It looks at blindness and thinking about blindness, not just as kind of a lack, but also a creative, different kind of way of engaging with the world. So we'll be getting a little taste. I was gonna say taste, but I was like, that's the wrong sense. A little
Let's
taste.
go with it. Yeah, yeah.
And then Crystal is an English and was teaching English and creative writing for a long time decades actually, at Capilano University in Northern Vancouver, and is now in retirement, enjoying yoga, cycling, and still writing amazing poetry. Her work, Sick Witch in particular, is kind of how we got connected. It also deals with vision health, experiences with ophthalmology and optometry, all these kind of different topics, as well as so much more than that. But that's kind of just the theme of today's event. Hopefully this will lead folks to reading more of Crystal's work as well. And she also writes prose, which I think is, again, a multi-talented person. She's like Devon, lots of different forms of writing and engagement with the world. I will leave it at that, and we're going to be starting off with Crystal. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thanks so much, Miriam. Yeah, my book, Sick Witch, focuses on a number of different health issues. I had this weird experience in, I think it was fall of 2004, and I fell ill and they didn't know what the hell was wrong with me. They thought maybe it was cat scratch fever or lymphoma, and it just kind of resolved itself after a while. But I think I've had more than my share of little weird things like a psoriatic middle toe, and I had a hemithyroidectomy just a year ago, and tons of allergies and weird things. And so I tried to vent some of my frustration in terms of the book, Sick Witch. So it was kind of fun to write. And I'm going to start by reading one of the earlier poems in the book, and it's called Fever Dream, Sick in China, because I feel as if I've been sick everywhere. And it's not as if I've been a great traveler, but just that sickness will descend. Fever Dream, Sick in China. After the silk factory, the pedicab lurches through polyester throngs. Diesel fumes pull my skin tight. I retch into a damp hand. Bells, horns, shriek, moan. And everywhere, one-speed bikes with bread box baskets intersect traffic. Spoke upon spoke weaves me into a dizzier puzzle. Coal-haired women with blouses buttoned to the neck, short skirts exposing garters and pull-up stockings. They cycle faster, faster. They move closer, closer. I am sicker, sicker. Every woman becomes Margaret Hamilton as Elmira Gulch as Wicked Witch, mouthing "to, to, to" in a language that clacks and roils. Above the horns, bells, calligrapher hands unfurl for my red slippers. Soon from blue-veined trees, hairless winged monkeys will descend with their penetrating almond eyes. And I think sort of a doppelganger for me is actually the Wicked Witch, or Elmira Gulch from The Wizard of Oz. You know, and I feel sometimes like that's what sickness is, this creepy, green-faced creature that comes and descends and wants to wreck up your day or something. So anyhow, Fever Dream, Sick in China. The next one is called Allergic White Spot. And I said to you, I've suffered from all kinds of allergies, food allergies, pollen allergies, whatever. I ask for the allergic menu. The waitress hands me bulky binder, pages upon pages of product, big black dots for dairy, soy, egg, corn, wheat, salmon burger, no. Veggie patty, no. Even pie, the stalwart standby, no. Resign myself to onion rings without the secret sauce, and clam chowder. For me, each laminated page slashed by a big X marks the spot. I'm so sick of allergy, sickness, fading vision. What if I ask for the Braille menu? Eyes closed, under my fingers, raised dots for the things I cannot have. Chicken pot pie, milkshake in the galvanized tumbler, broccoli cheese soup, fingertips eating them up. I will open my eyes wide, so wide, look around me at what I can have. The next poem I'm going to read you is called Francis Bacon. And I think sometimes people wonder, you know, where people get ideas from for poetry. And I had a little notebook with me when I was attending a first cataract surgery, which was about 7 years ago, actually. Today, it's kind of funny. And this was something I'd picked up in the Liverpool Tate Gallery. And it's a triptych of Francis Bacon called Three Studies for Figures at the Base of the Crucifixion. And it's the most weird thing. So this is the front of my notebook. That's part of the picture. And then here's another part. And then inside this third part, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can demute people and people can, Miriam, and people can say what they think of this weird thing.
Yeah, if people
Here's at the
are,
base of the crucifixion.
if people want to unmute or write in the chat immediately, I just watched Poor Things, and it
What
made
did you
me think
watch?
of the Poor Things with
Okay,
Emma
no.
Stone.
Oh, okay.
But personally, it just made me think of these like weird kind of like the surgeon main character makes this cross between like a chicken and a dog.
Yeah, they're sort of like they don't look completely human, or to me, I see like different bits of weird limbs that are attached to wrong parts of the body. And then also in this the one that's on the cover of my book, anyhow, there's this huge open mouth and these big ears and no eyes. Or this one has a blindfold and like these huge lips and teeth, and I just find it bizarre. I do really like this artist, Francis Bacon, and this was something that he done back in 1944. And it was something that was with me as I was going to appointments for ophthalmologists and kind of looking at it, and then I was recording bits of my experience. So this one's called Francis Bacon. His painting, Three Studies for Figures at the Base of a Crucifixion. Triptych, elongated necks and limbs, having eaten and drunk too much, like a perverted Alice, X-rated tenniel pieces, disembodied. Not one has eyes. One is blindfolded. What is beneath? Ben's sinister synecdoche, piece of tale, tale of peace, misogynist, misanthrope, equal opportunity hater, nihilist, existentialist, gloom, blindness. For protection? Can't see the horror? Or is it punishment itself? The sightlessness, a crucifixion. Rows of teeth and open mouths where the eyes should be. The frantic, malevolent teeth of his screaming popes, as if the world is something to be consumed, and voraciously, predator, predator, ingress, egress, Alice forever falling, all fall. Okay, and I will read just one final one before Devon comes on and completes her essay, and then I'll return and maybe do another couple afterwards. This is about an experience at the eye doctor, and I think a lot of us can probably or relate to this, that it's kind of a strange, weird vulnerability. And you too, Miriam, having just had the cornea weird diagnosis today. Intimates. At the eye doctor's, no stirrups and speculum, no probing pink canals and cavities, no thin, fishy leakage, but a deeper intimacy. She stares into my inner orbits, curvature of each retina orb's hydrostatic equilibrium, back of my brain, a planetary pull, getting close to the soul. Her Eckelberg eye looms. She commands my eyeballs move as the hands of a clock. Look to 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock. What time is it, Mr. Wolf? Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have. Putting me through the day. I've been in this chair forever, soon into the seasons. Don't want to lose an hour. Will I see better if I gain one? Spring forward, fall back. I struggle to remain stationary, compliant. For today's children, analog is ancient as Sanskrit. What does she bark to them? I recall a Beverly Cleary story. Mother tells Ramona to leave home at 8:15. She knows a quarter is 25 cents, so she leaves at 8:25. Doesn't understand how she can be late for school, runs and runs and can't catch up. Sure don't want that kind of miscommunication when the cataract surgery marks my eye for implant placement. 6 o'clock, he says, and marks below my iris. 6? Is that AM or PM? Time for a drink? It's cocktail hour somewhere. Don't fuck up. Don't want my eye to be a cinematographic photograph. No camera obscura for me. How obsolete is that? No aqueous humor leaking through a pinhole like a blown out Easter egg. My vision like a Jeff Wall light box. Do not desire to stand on my head to see everything. My life unfolding as a photoconceptual performance piece. Is Pluto even registered as a planet anymore? Things can change in the blink of an eye. Don't blink. My eye jerks into readiness. Fuck! Spring forward! Spring back! Fall forward! And I'll end there for the first part.
Thanks, Crystal. Devin speaking
Thank you,
here.
Devin.
Miriam, thank you so much for having me. And Crystal, it's such a pleasure to be here with you and to share work alongside you. What I'm going to read
Feelings
now.
mutual. Me
Oh,
too, Devon. Yes.
thanks. Well, and I was just gonna say, I think there's some beautiful connections coming through of our work, in particular of the photograph. Um,
Mhm.
what I'm going to do now is read an edited version of a chapter that I've written called "Blind Perception: Disappearing Blindness with a Twist," and this comes from the edited volume "Disappearing Disability: Encounters in Disability Studies," edited by Tanya Tichkowski, Elaine Cagulata, and Madeline DeWells. Okay, so this is a condensed version. And I'm going to turn my gaze to the left. I'm reading off of a larger screen. I am blind, so I'm just trying to orient myself here on camera. So if I disappear from your view, I'm still here. Unfortunately, the more beautiful the picture, the sadder the case. This utterance harbors both an interesting and intriguing sentiment. It is not often heard. It is not often that we hear beauty spoken of as unfortunate and sad. The more beautiful the picture, the more unfortunate, the more sad. Such a sentiment suggests, too, that the picture, more beautiful or not, is indeed a sad one, a tragic depiction of something. And the more beautiful this picture becomes, the sadder the case. This is an interesting sentiment, one whose intrigue invites attention. The ways blindness is made to mean, to feel, and the ways it is seen are ways that lie buried in the picture of blindness depicted above. Viewing the world through blindness, seeing its creativity, learning from its observations, and trusting its perceptions, all of this is lost, is disappeared in medicine's technical view of blindness, a view that sees only lack, absence, distortion, and sadness. This medical view makes implicit reference to what eyes should look like. It makes implicit reference too to the beauty of normal eyes, to what Rosemary Garland Thompson refers to as the quote, normate, the normal state of affairs, beautiful or not. To make appear what has been disappeared is not an easy task. It requires appearance and disappearance to collide. It requires, too, what is seen and unseen to collide. It is amid this collision between the beautiful and the sadness that the meaning made of blindness may be revealed. As a way to reveal this meaning making, it may be spoken of as a narrative method, as one that requires the narration of the beauty and the sadness and the collision between the two that is blindness. A narration that resides in the various ways that blindness is lived. I now turn to a narration of the story of blindness as I live it. It has been said that seeing is believing, and to some extent, I suppose there may be some truth in this saying. Many of us, at one time or another, may have experienced something and thought, oh, if I didn't see it, I wouldn't have believed it. Better still is a picture to then share with others as proof of what you would not have believed had you not seen it. The proof in a picture lies in its capacity to support and even secure a belief in an experience or way of being in the world. This attributes the power of truth to the picture. And yet, seeing is not always believing. My blind eyes are one of those sights for the medical profession that are hard to believe since they, eye doctors, cannot see what I see. They cannot see my blindness, the blind sights of my eyes, and therefore they find it difficult, if not impossible, to trust them, to believe what my eyes see. I suppose my blind eyes are among one of those things you have to see to believe. Perhaps it was this logic This need to see in order to believe that led me to a tiny windowless room in Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto, a room dedicated to capturing, in the form of a picture, the elusive, almost unbelievable sight of blindness. My eyes were a case of sight gone blind, and the sights of my eyes were of extreme interest to the retina specialists who had referred me to that room. I stood on the threshold of the windowless room, a room made to feel tiny, almost cramped by the massive machine it housed. This machine was a giant camera with a lens so powerful it could capture blindness in the form of a picture. This machine looked to me as if it were made by a children's toy company. The large, bulky parts of the camera appeared to be made of hard gray plastic, akin to that of toddlers' toys, made to withstand the rough treatment that can accompany children's play and movement. I'm not sure why, but the presence of this machine, this camera, as a toy made me feel uneasy, almost suspicious of it. The technician, or as I liked to call her, photographer, met me at the door and guided me with an open gesture of her arm toward what appeared to me to be a periscope with a plastic ledge. I wondered if perhaps this ledge was intended for the blind patient subject to rest their chin while the technician photographer played around with the camera, adjusting and moving the lens to set up various shots, capturing blindness from all angles. She instructed me to stand facing the machine with the right side of my face pressed as close as possible to the periscope while, as I had suspected, resting my chin on the ledge. The circular hole or lens of the periscope covered half of my face from forehead to chin. I remember feeling as though I were split into two worlds, my right eye staring into the black abyss of the camera's lens, while my left continued to perceive blindness. It was as though there were a split between my being and my act of perceiving. This split allowed me to notice from my left side the technician photographer looking at her computer. It screened visible to both of us, while from my right, I felt the predatory lens of the camera. The technician photographer informed me that the lens of the camera was aligned with that of my right eye, signaling that she was indeed ready to begin shooting. She counted aloud, 1, 2, and on the third count, a bright white light burst from within the dark abyss of the camera and then disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. My right eye felt as though it had been assaulted. My eyeball throbbed in its socket. Water had emerged from both corners, collecting in the center of my eye, and then dripped, as if running away from the lens of the camera, down my cheek, off my chin, and onto the floor. Before I could verbally react to the light, the technician photographer reminded me to keep my face pressed against the periscope and my chin on the ledge. There were many more photos to take, and time, as always for medicine, was of the essence. After what seemed like hours, I felt a hand on my left shoulder. It was the technician photographer signaling that the photo shoot of both my eyes had come to an end. She handed me a tissue to wipe the water from my eyes and gestured once again with her arm to a stool where I could sit and regain my sense of being and to reconnect it to my act of perception, a connection enabled largely through my blind perception. It was as though the act of photographing my eye intruded on my attempt to envelop being blind and the being of blindness through perception. As did the burning from the flash of the camera, the bright white light began to fade, and I noticed, once again, the screen of the computer. The technician was scrolling through the pictures of my blind eyes captured by that massive camera. I wondered, what was she seeing? Did she see what I was seeing or something else? What was she hoping to see? What proof of blindness was she searching for in those pictures? Had she seen it? Did the pictures prove and document the truth of my blindness? Was she now believing what she saw? I remember getting up, about to leave that tiny, cramped room when one of the pictures filled the large computer screen. I stopped, standing just behind her. The image stopped me in my tracks. What I saw, I couldn't believe. Was that my blindness? My eyes, my blind eyes, they were filling the screen in front of both of us. At that very moment, her eyes and mine looking at blindness. I couldn't believe it. Are those of me, of my eyes? Are those pictures of my eyes? The words spilled out of my mouth and filled what little space was left in that tiny, cramped room. Yes, she replied without turning to look at me. I remember feeling as though the pictures were enveloping me. For a second, blindness was everywhere in a way different from the everywhereness way I usually felt it. Blindness was everywhere in me, in the picture, in front of her, in my eyes. My blind eyes were pictures and they were beautiful. The words formed gently on my lips. They're beautiful, I whispered. The technician photographer spun around on her stool to look at me. Unfortunately, the more beautiful the picture, the sadder the case. Her words hung in the air between us, once more splitting my being from my act of perceiving. I perceived beauty. My being was sad. That tiny cramped room was now at capacity. The picture was of me, of my eyes, of my blindness. I was the case, and unfortunately, I was a beautifully sad one. We both saw the same thing, the same picture, but I did not believe, despite the proof, what she saw. Susan Sontag tells us that, quote, the very insatiability of the photographing eye changes the terms of confinement in the cave, our world. In teaching us a new visual code, photographs alter and enlarge our notion of what is worth looking at and what we have a right to observe. They are an ethics of seeing, end quote. Sontag makes use of Plato's simile of the cave. Here, Socrates introduces the cave as a simile to depict the taken for granted world and the idea or form that marks the origin of this world. He describes life in the cave as a series of images in the form of shadows cast on the wall of the cave by the light of the idea. People in the cave are depicted as chained to these images, incapable of looking toward the origin, the source of the shadows. The photograph, with its insatiable eye, Sontag tells us, changes how we are confined in our taken for granted world. We are confined not only to the image cast on the wall of the cave, but to the production through photography of images of those images. We take pictures of the shadows on the wall and not of what produced them. There are two mistakes here. First, we mistake the image for the real. And second, we mistake the photograph for the image. The terms of confinement to our world, to which Sontag refers, is now changed to our confinement to the reproduction of images in that world. The ethics of seeing in relation to the photograph is an ethics of looking, of what deserves our look and what we have the right to look at, to observe. Not everything is worth photographing, and not everything is worth looking at. This means that we make decisions, not merely about what to look at, although we do decide this. We make decisions about what deserves not only our attention, but attention in general. It is cultural, values, customs, and the rest that form the basis of what deserves our attention, and thus the basis of the ethics of seeing. For medicine, the eyes, including blind eyes, are not only worth looking at. Medicine understands itself as having a right to do so. The photograph, the record, marks the insatiability of the medical eye. It also understands itself as having a right to record this looking, this gaze, to take a photograph. But to take a photograph of blind eyes is to take a photograph of an image, of what the photograph depicts what blind eyes see. This requires that medicine disappears what blind people see and how we experience what we see. Our seeing is disappeared in favor of making medicine's image of our blindness appear. It sees our blindness, but not what we see. Our blind perception. The medical picture of our blindness may be beautiful, but unfortunately, the more beautiful the picture, the sadder the case. In a similar way, what we see may be beautiful, but the medical image of what we see makes us a sad case. The medical photo, like medicine itself, separates being blind from blind perception. Being blind is disappeared. For medicine, there is no being in blindness. The patient, subject, cases, act of perception is gone. They are blind, and this is what makes us sad cases. A medical photo disappears blindness, revealing blind perception as distortion. Any version of blind perception as perception and not distortion is disappeared in favor of a sighted perspective. When my blind eyes saw and interpreted the image of blindness on screen as beautiful, my blind perception was reduced to distortion. The more beautiful the picture, the sadder the case. And my being in blindness reduced to a life of adjustment. The blind sights of my eyes were nothing more than sheer distortion, and the medical photograph proved it. The technician photographer used the photograph of my blind eyes as a tool to teach me that what I saw and how I saw my act of perception was not perception at all. My being was not only split from my act of perceiving, but also removed, severed from my person altogether. This medical photograph of my blind eyes was, to use Roland Barthes' words, quote, not a just image, just an image, end quote. The image of my eyes was just that, an image, and a beautiful one. But the ethics of seeing took beauty and turned it into sadness. The technician photographer, medicine, consumed just an image, the picture of my blind eyes, as a just image of blindness. Medicine accepted the image, the photograph, as shadows on the wall of the cave, not only as the being of blindness, but also what blindness perceives. They looked at the image, saw distortion, and believed what they were seeing. They believed that blindness was indeed as pictured. It's image distortion. The picture of my blind eyes to them was a just image of blindness, thus turning me into a sad case, a representation of distortion. But I looked at the picture and did not see distortion. I saw beauty. And this perception, my image of blindness, had to be disappeared by medicine as a way to make its own image of blindness appear, and appear as just. The perception of beauty is really the perception of a sad case. What the camera records or captures in the form of a picture comes alive only in the act of perceiving. An image becomes a just image or just an image, depending on what we believe we are looking at. Sontag observes that, quote, photography implies that we know about the world if we accept it as the camera records it. But this is the opposite of understanding, which starts from not accepting the world as it looks, end quote. Not accepting the world as it looks is blind perception. This perception is not a different way of seeing the world, nor is it a new way of seeing the world. Blind perception is an outright rejection of seeing the image on the wall of the cave as real. Blind perception is the act of not accepting the world as it looks. It bears the beginning of understanding. This is the beginning of understanding, not merely understanding blindness itself, but rather marks one beginning, and I would say one of the major beginnings of beginning to understand. The quest to understand is not achieved when we simply accept that what we are seeing is indeed representative of the whole, the truth. Contrary to common belief, seeing is not believing, and it is blind perception that allows for a journey of understanding, one far more dynamic and interesting than merely looking and seeing distortion. The blind journey of understanding is wrapped in beauty, a beauty so intriguing and detailed that it could never be captured on the wall of a cave. What needs to be disappeared then is the image of blindness as distortion. What needs to be appeared is the image of blindness as perception. Over to you, Crystal. Thanks so much.
That's so great, Devon. I loved all of the oxymoronic back and forth. Yeah, so good. I don't know how I can follow that up, but I'm going to read another poem or two, and then Devon, I think, has a poem that she wants to read. It's really really lovely. I'm going to read one called Bindi. Before follow-up laser surgery, a stick-on yellow plastic dot on one cheek to make clear at which eye the surgeon should aim his laser ray, blasting the monsters of scar tissue. The lone dot like a slippage, an out-of-place bindi, a fallen colored tear, a faltering third eye displaced, chakra not sure where to go, oscillating aura, mysticism on the move. Around the periphery of the eye clinic, in a slow-moving meditative trance, we walk, marked, dilated, we of the pineal eyes, waiting for the surgeon God, whose hand and word are wisdom, what will spill into our two open pupils, enter our torpid brains, making our affliction into high art. And I wanted to say, I had an earlier, much longer version of this poem, and it referenced a really cool visual artist called Barty Kerr. Her last name is spelled Kher, and her artwork is mostly of bindis that she has placed. I saw this at the Vancouver Art Gallery a few years ago. Here's an image of a heart that she's done. It's very big, and then it's just all these little stick-on bindis up close, and something. She's done some fiberglass elephant that's life-size. I've just seen photographs of it. And then the one image I was able to capture shows the eye of the elephant and then all of these little bindis sort of circling around it. I think it's just kind of a cool thing. But I can't help but think of being in the surgeon's office and, you know, stick something on you just in case of medical malpractice or something. And it seems like, oh my gosh, it just seems you're in such a vulnerable position or something through here. And then also in an earlier version of that poem, just spent so much time in waiting rooms in doctors' offices that I made some comment about how, gee, if we're here waiting and wandering long enough, maybe the surgeon is going to ask that the GP send another referral along because it's coming to the next 6-month period or something. It just can be so tortuous. And then I'm going to end with one called Crow. And I have been long interested in the work of Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes. My first book of poetry is called After Ted and Sylvia, about Plath and Hughes. And this particular poem references a little bit more of Ted Hughes, and he has a whole book of crow poems. And they're illustrated by this wonderful artist, Leonard Baskin. And one of the poems is called, I think it's Tyrannosaurus Crow. And just look at the thunder thighs here. It doesn't look like any crow I've ever seen. And I keep thinking of, especially at this time of year, when we have little fledglings and nests and stuff, and the crows can get totally vicious. So this informs some of the poem. Crow. Black dot spotting, pebbles dislodged from the pavement, running the other way, hands in front of my face to protect from corvid incursion. I know they know me, recognize me, have done one of their members ill. Something with a hose, I think, a harsh onslaught of water, the fierce stream hissing like bullets from a gun. And this is the repavement as I return home from laser eye surgery. Corvus cunning. They can master tools. I wonder what I have left out in my backyard. Not the hoe. Oh no, not the shovel. I think of Ted Hughes's crow poems. Is this crow Tyrannosaurus? Primeval, it wants to become more and bigger, Hulk lurking into recognition. Is this a disaster? The spreading, oozing lamprey body, vindictiveness, cleverness, streaking through the retina, a close-up of all black. Black as purity, black as death. What omen? Crow, perhaps raven, a large wing, the midnight winging of crows, sheeting down. Crow, trickster god, not a murder, but an egg, a plague of crows. Or sweet cease, restful, primed gesso, black canvas, ready, so ready, awaiting the light. Not just the crow poems after all, a conjurer's trick, behind the ear, coming from the back of my brain. Opposite movement of the thought fox, violently, malevolently, the I becomes its own hot, dark, panting muse. Okay, and I'll end there so that Devon has time for her poem.
Oh, Devon, you're just muted.
Oh, I say, Crystal, I don't want to take up too much time. Would you like to keep going?
Oh, no, do your poem.
Sure.
And then
Can
we'll
you
have
just
time
say
for
that
chatting.
last line of your poem again? I think that's so beautiful.
I said, the I becomes its own hot, dark, panting muse.
Ooh, hot, dark, panting muse. Okay. Ooh, thank you for that. I love that. What I'm about to read now, I think Crystal really connects to your exploration of, as you say, kind of coming home at the ophthalmologist's or, surgeon, and that return home, and how blindness, or however you express, for those of you in the room who may not understand yourself as blind and may feel like low vision is more comfortable for you, but for me, it's blindness. And my relationship with blindness and of being blind really shifts from day to day. Um, and this is a poem that I wrote when I was feeling like I haven't been a good partner to blindness. Now is the time. We have not sat together since I have not felt the weight of your presence, although my body still aches from last we met. Your form lingers, your image, Your appearance hangs in front of me. You are ever present, and I have ignored you. I feel guilty. I mention you mostly because I feel compelled to. I speak your name as though it were mine. Unfaithful. I have been unfaithful. I have moved amongst others, speaking your name disembodied and aloof. I cannot shake you, and to be honest, I'm not sure that I want to. You linger in me, on me, around me, and yet I feel it has been some time since we have been together, really together. My complicated companion. Shall we start again? Shall we go through the clumsy choreography of introductions, pretending to not feel our connection? Pretending or perhaps feigning a coy aloofness. I have been unfaithful, but of course you knew this. You were there. You. And yet here I sit with you, feeling as though we are strangers, my complicated companion, a distant intimacy, my blindness. Shall we start again? Shall we be in the unimagined together once more? Or perhaps for the first time? I want to be faithful. I want to love only you, be only you, speak your name, my name. But it feels as though it has been some time. Perhaps now, as we sit, perhaps now we may start again. My complicated companion, my reflection unseen in the eye of the one who beholds you, my sweet companion. Why do I insult you to your face? Why must I contort our shared being into something removed? You have carried me, limp body, dead weight. I am asking if we can start again, knowing the answer will always be the same. Yes. Yes, because there is no other option. Yes, because you are a glutton for punishment. Yes, because I do not learn quickly. Yes, because I feel it is because I am all you've got, knowing passively, calmly, almost aggressively from feeling otherwise. The truth is, I hope you will have me. My complicated companion, my eyes are open. I have not cried for you, for us. Dried-eyed, ashamed and alone, I sit. Shall we start? May we start again? Thanks.
Thank you so much, both Devon and Crystal. I feel like you just both took us in so many directions that were so creative and imaginative and immersive. So yeah, thank you so much for that. But we are going to wrap it up. We're just a minute past the hour now. Thank you so much to everyone for coming and engaging in. And the next event, so the last Wednesday of April, the theme is on fat phobia in medicine and how it intersects with race. Again, we have a great kind of researcher and writer as well as a poet working together on that. You'll be seeing a new face hosting, so I'm sad to say this is my farewell, but I'm hoping I'll be in the audience at least for as many as I can attend while I'm a resident. And yeah, so I'll let everyone have a good night. Crystal and Devon, I'll just follow up with you two over email after.
Okay.
And yeah, thank you everyone.
Sounds
Have a good
good.
night.
Thanks everybody for coming.